Welcome, folks, to another episode of the Exposed Vet Productions on this beautiful 10th day of April uh, 2025. Uh, Today we have Mr. Ray Cobb. He's our co host down in the great state of Tennessee, dodging thunderstorms right now, but I think he's doing okay. How you doing, Ray?
I'm doing great. How are we doing?
Oh, we hanging like a hair in a biscuit. Today we got a treat for you guys. We got fresh off the NOVA conference in the big city of Minneapolis, St. Paul. He just got back. He's got a little bit of jet lag going on. He's been back throwing fighting with the VA the last few days. We got the Mr. Alex Graham. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm doing real good, but I think you're pulling a leg of your listeners there. I don't have no jet lag. That's only a 2 hour time difference. Now, jet
Mm.
lag is when you leave from San Francisco and you get off the airplane at Tan Son Nhut in Vietnam. Now that's a little bit of jet lag. You're a whole day ahead of where you left.
That's pretty sad when they put you on an airplane, send you to the damn place you can't even spell. No, but I'm glad to see you back and made it in one piece, and you're all educated and ready to go. And we've had some discussions this week. You've had some issues, and you've been doing some serious butt chewing with some folks at the VA. And I'm proud of you.
Well, my wife
Mm.
tells me I got Tourette syndrome. I open my mouth up and you never know what the hell is going to come out.
Well, my wife says that too, but they've come out with a new term now. We have no filter. You
Oh,
know.
well, I know that. I know that. Men get boxes out
Mhm.
and they can only have one box out at a time. Apparently, they have to put the lid back on it, put that box back on the shelf, and get box number two out. So, my wife
Oh.
explained women can get multiple boxes out at the same time and address
Mhm.
all of them simultaneously. That is until the pancakes start burning.
Mhm.
But we're not allowed to talk about that.
Well, what's that? What's that? Everybody needs to read that book. Now, I tell you, if you're married and married a long time, you need to read that book, find out what it's all about. Read the book. But no,
What the
pretty had
carrot feeding of wife?
yeah, gotta work.
Go
How'd the
ahead.
conference go? How'd the conference go? Did you get some good input information? Anything going on with the OCG and
What we did get, I think, is that a group of us who've never actually met in the flesh that did the SMC class training for
Mhm.
that I was teaching, we got to meet in person, some of these guys and gals, and compare notes. And something Wes McCauley and I both noticed is that by all by all appearances, it appears as though the VA considers that the SMC ladder ends at L or maybe M, but mostly at L because you cannot have two L's in their mind, like two aid and attendances, obviously, that to them is pyramiding. And it became a little bit more obvious here recently where I got two ANAs about a month ago now, about the middle of March. And it came down from the BVA, and they all sat there and scratched their heads, and they said, "Well, this is impossible. This judge is telling us to give Mr. Johnny Vet here two aid and attendances, but we can't do that. The machine won't let us. It tells us it's wrong." So they had to go talk to their poobahs and the head honchos, and everybody had to cluck cluck like a bunch of hens. And finally, somebody says, "Well, let's just go along with the judge, even though we know he's wrong." That's the consensus in BBMS in the notes section is they had to manually rewrite the SMC calculator in longhand almost. Well, I typed it up
Mhm.
real nice and neat, but it's not in the automatically generated format. You can tell somebody
Mhm.
had to create it from scratch.
Well,
And
well,
that's impossible. Well, we know it's not impossible because of Brennesser versus Shinseki, but outside of that, they've got their little blinders on with that M21, and it's like the Oracle at Delphi, the golden statue everybody was worshiping out there until Moses, 86'd them. You don't. It's a computer. It's not a Bible. It's not written. It changes 135 times a year. So how could you rely on it?
No,
Look,
they should be able to rely on Alex. I'm sure that they hire and they have people in their employment, these data scientists that know how to write code and things like that. They can go in that damn system and they can take it and they can look at it and they can figure out a code to make it work, where the computer will accept that. So why they're not doing that is beyond me. If they can't do it, need to get somebody that can.
did you
Well,
ever think
that's
maybe they don't want you to do it, or they don't
yeah.
want to do it?
Hmm.
There might be something nefarious going on here.
Hmm.
Go ahead, Ray. You know what I was thinking, and I think Ray might second this thought, is those guys from Doge or DOGE, the muskrats,
Hmm.
gonna come in there and gonna say, wait a minute, we can fix this in about 5 seconds with a little bit of that AI shit.
Yes, they can.
No, you're not allowed in here. You don't have clearance. You got top secret
Oh,
crypto, can't come in.
I know a couple that do.
Well, it's kind of crazy, but I think you're right. I think, okay, let's look at it this way. I was working yesterday on my webpage, and the guy that was helping me and teaching me how to do all this stuff and set it up, when he found out how old I was, he says, "You're one of the oldest guys I've ever known that wants to try to do a web page." And I thought, well, no, well, yeah, what's wrong with that? Nothing's wrong with it. It's just that we have a harder time understanding all this new stuff. But if we got guys that are, up in the mid 50s and early 60s sitting there making these decisions, and they don't want any help, they don't want any of this changing in their computer system they've been doing for the last 10 years, they go to buck at it. They're just going to say it doesn't work and drop it at that.
The older we get, the more set in our ways we get, and it's hard. Anything new comes on. We don't want nothing new. We want to keep things status quo. That's the
Uh,
issue. And that's
I'll
change
tell
is
you
hard.
what, with AI, there is no such thing as status quo or the word static. It's changing so fast. It's like going
Uh,
dial phones to touchstone and beyond in like
well,
30 minutes instead of 30 years.
well, these guys take it and they write the code out, and when they get the code written, they've got special codes they put in there. And I want to tell you something, guys. It's kind of crazy because they'll put a code in and it'll start doing something, but it'll go through the whole system and start learning, and it teaches itself. It's called a learning code. It does that, and it can be, I mean, it can be enormous as to what happens, because it's all math anyway. You
Well,
know,
think about this, John. Historically, the VA jammed their heels in the dirt. They were the last agency to transpose and go from paper to electronic.
yeah.
They fought tooth and nail to keep that paper. And when they did finally transition over, uh, they they screwed it all up. They used their own IT people. They never got anything perfect. And with VBMS about 16 or 17, they had to bring Microsoft company in.
I remember that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember
to
that.
fix it. So if you had more than 200 people on it nationwide, the whole thing crashed.
I remember that. It crashed like a
It
yeah.
was, yeah, it was
it
like
crashed like a
dial.
helicopter in Hudson Bay.
It was like dial up. It was bad. But when they got it fixed, it didn't take them 6 years to get it right. Uh, it's like this thing with Cerner EHR electronic health records. They deploy it and they kill 40 vets because they forgot to call them and tell them to come in for a CT with contrast to check out that stage 4 cancer. Next time they get in touch with him, You'll have to go visit him down at Glenwood Cemetery, son.
Hey, remember Stretch?
Well, listen, VA has never been a chicken dinner winner in the IT game, and for some reason they know that, but they didn't know it until recently when they switched over into AMA. They changed a lot of regulations. They had to modify them because they were different from legacy. And every one of these conferences I go to, everybody says, better erase that on 14.632 or 6.29 or 3.303D. You got to change that. That's wrong. But we just overthrew that at the federal circuit. The VA wrote those rules afterwards. They're supposed to be the specialists.
Mm-hmm.
It disturbs me greatly to see error in code in 38 CFR or well, it can't be in 38 USC because Congress has spoken. But when you translate from USC to CFR, it's got to be perfect. But Chevron deference made it go all out of shape. But with Loper Bright now, it brings it back into focus where a judge can look at this thing and say, this is how I interpret it, not the secretary or the OGC say, well, this is what we meant to say. This is what the secretary really was talking about. So we're going to go with our interpretation. Screw you.
Mm.
Loper Bright takes that away from the OGC and puts it back into the CAVC's bailiwick, or perhaps even the veterans law judges at the BVA. So it's a earth-moving change in our legislation. How that's going to play out, I think, all hinges greatly on how adept you are at arguing at the court. You got to have those, silver tongue like Ken Carpenter or Zach Stoltz or Amy Odom. And if, God forbid, you get a mediocre attorney driving the boat and that thing crashes and burns, we're all going to get stuck with it. We want the best and the brightest. That's what I love about NOVA. There are people that ask questions. They don't just accept what people talk to them about. That's where I think I make a big difference in this thing is nobody taught me how to be an attorney. Nobody taught me whether I could do something or I can't do it. So I think it's pretty neat. I just go do something and wait for them to tell me I can't. And that's where I'm at in this business. It's wide open. I don't think that there is any boundaries personally.
Well, when they overturn Chevron, each one of these issues that are overturned, they're going to have to be argued in the court. And it's going to take the courts to get them straightened out. And I don't think me, you, or Ray will see the results on all the end product in our lifetimes. Because they're moving at a snail trying to drag a 200-pound weight behind it.
Well, look at the inroads we've made, let's say, since I came into the picture in big time in 2008. Mm-hmm. You did the BVA search for 3.350 to look at old cases that mention special monthly compensation. There were about 13 a year. Mm-hmm. Hell, I do 13 a month.
Well, that's why we call you the guru.
Well, I'll tell you what, Wesley is making me look like a fool. He's using all the AI and the search and annotated records where they just shovel them in one end and spits out. You put the keywords in you're looking for, and it spits it all out. You can do 30 bets a day where I could do 3. But I love paper. I'm 74. I can get to lean back a little bit, take life a little slower. I don't want to lead the parade. I want to be in the parade, but I'm not necessarily a leader. I observe. I should get the senior professorship
Good.
seat. Not that I know a lot, but I just see things and it doesn't seem right. And I say, how come they're doing it that way? And I don't see the law that supports it. And when you put your thumb down on it and you start pushing, all of a sudden, well, there is no rule that says you can't do that. It's just that's the way we've always done it. Well, shit, that's a recipe for busting it wide open in my book.
What do you think, man? I mean, that's pretty cool him doing that because I mean, you look at this AI stuff that he's using, and you're doing your research on, your briefs and things like that you got to turn into the court, and all of a sudden, you're talking court case. All you got to do is mention court cases, and AI goes in and digs out what you need and comes in and puts it in your brief. I mean, that's like having a secretary now to pay her.
Yeah, yeah. There's probably a lot of secretaries got laid off.
Well, that's sad, but no, I'm serious. I mean, he used it in mine. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think
Well,
I sent you a copy of it.
I have a group of it's called Killer Sites,
Yeah.
and I teach it. I offer it to my guys that took the classes with for SMC. It's just little phrases that came out in big name cases, but they weren't necessarily the most important part of the case. But it's a little phrase that supports what you're trying to do, and you just throw it in there. And some of them are real rib jabbers, and whatever it is, it seems to work for me. I don't know. Like I said, I don't like to write a brief the way I would for the court. I like to write it for a judge who a little bit less formal, but you invoke all that sympathy for your client. I'm sure your mothers and your grandmothers all told you that honey attracts bees and vinegar don't. I read a lot of court briefs, appellants briefs. I see attorneys use the phrases, the court must find that my client is correct in this assumption according to this regulation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do that. I never ever tell a judge what he's got to do. Well, that's to me, that's the quickest recipe to get a bitch slap I can think of.
You gotta learn how to duck. You
Yeah.
created a monster. You created a monster.
Well, I use some interesting. I use some interesting phrases like, but this is not the end of the matter, or the appellant benefits from the simplicity of his argument, which most of them do. But you have to use a whole bunch of legalese to reach that point. But mostly, I don't tell the judge that the VA examiner at the CMP exam must be raised by wolves or be using his belly for a porthole. He's got his head up the wrong place. I don't do that. I don't demean them. I used to. I don't mind calling out somebody that gets way off left base, but I'm not adverse to doing it politely. I guess that's the difference. Like I said, I know law dogs, attorneys that go to law school, and what they teach them is like a pit bull mentality in some respects, but that's wrong to me.
Well, I look at it this way. I look at my demeanor, and the more they deny me, the meaner I get.
Well, you're right, Alex. I can remember being many, many years ago, being young. I
Mm-hmm.
remember my grandfather says, "Well, you'll get more bees with honey than anything else." And
Unless it's wood
so,
bees.
well, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
carpet bees, those carpet bees.
Carpet
But
bees, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I try to do. James Cripp's a friend of all of us. He tells me that I'm too laid back sometimes, but I get my point across. I just do it a little more tactfully than he does.
That's right.
He's just as correct, if not more so, but I kind of like making them feel a little sorry for me, or
Mm-hmm.
let them think that I may not be quite as smart as they are, make them think they're smarter than me. And then I keep going round and round till they give me the answer or whatever it is that I'm wanting to accomplish.
And
I
talk
like
to them.
I like to get them to say something that's, well, it's obvious that your client needs aid and attendance. We're not debating that. It's just he doesn't have 100% rating. Well,
Don't need it.
I want to get that on paper. I want to immortalize that because that's against the law. It's one of the most common mistakes. They just think for some reason, and the M21 states it, and this is where they get all these misconceptions. It says, in order to get aid and attendance, a person must have a 100% schedule or rating or something very near to it, meaning like 70% for PTSD might not get it, but if you took 70 and then another 30% for COPD or another 60 for ischemic heart disease and put the two of them together and come up with 90, that might be enough. But then again, they don't like to take two separate disabilities and put them together to cause aid and attendance. They'll say, we'll take diabetes and all the peripheral neuropathy on all four extremities.
Mm-hmm.
We'll call that pretty close to it. Or Parkinson's with 30s and 20s and 10s and zeros and 10s and 20s. And they all add up to 90. And they're, okay, we can give you aid and attendance. But it's wrong. You don't have to have 100% rating except for SMCS. And I enunciate that, and I love to see it, that the judge takes it and he says, Mr. Graham is entirely correct. You only need 100 to get to SMCS, or 100 plus 60, whichever way you want to look at it.
You have some at 100.
But it has to be for a single disease process. You can't do the GDIU split 40 and some more for 70.
Yeah,
It has to be one unique process. That's the only place that you'll find that in 1114. And I don't know how they managed to torture that meaning out of it, that you had to have the 100. But I love to get them to say that and get it on paper, get it right into the rating decision, because I can take that up to the board. And the only thing holding me back is if they ain't over 75, they're going to spend 16 months waiting for their money every time, guaranteed win. Or if you're advanced on a docket, you'll get your money in 3 months. But I guarantee you'll get your money. Judges are not stupid for the most part. I mean, there are a few there who go without saying. I don't like to burn all my bridges behind me at the board. I know they all read my blog because I met 3 veterans law judges that I know quite well at the conferences. Jim Marsh, James Ridgway, and Brad Hennings. They're all former judges, and I've had all 3 of them, or sat in front of them, or had them cut paper on all of my guys as I've gone up there. And here's a real funny story. Jim Ridgway's dad was a general, James Ridgway. He, the younger son, my age, never went into the service. I did, he didn't. But his dad was at Tactical Air Command, the same time my dad was, up at Langley Air Force Base in Hampton, Virginia. They were having a cocktail party one night, and my job was always to run around with the tray and deliver the drinks and take the orders. And I could make, $2 an hour doing that. My dad would pay me to do that. And I personally know General Ridgway. James Ridgway's father drank Scotch neat, occasionally with club soda, but mostly neat. And I told James that this last trip, I said, yeah, I served your dad cocktails back in 1964. He said, shut the front door. It's a small world, but Jim Marsh even remembered me. That made me feel good. I argued he did a travel board hearing, I think it was in Oakland. And I brought a guy in there for hepatitis C, and brought my jet gun and asked Judge Marsh if he'd like to roll up his sleeve. I'd show him how the jet gun worked. He declined. So I shot a banana with it so I could show him how it worked.
What they happen when they look at you and said, you work for Asnod? I am Asnod.
Yeah, I think that was John Hager. He says, you work for I like John Hager. Yeah, he's a hoot. But you know, most of these guys that like veterans are veterans. They might have worked in Judge Advocate General's office, putting us drunk people, enlisted AWOL guys in jail for a week or something. But you know, they meant well. It was a job, just like anything else. But it's nice to see all these judges, and they all tell me, he says, "Oh yeah, shit." We talk with the judges that are still at the board now. We have our own little inward facing face group, kind of Facebook face group or whatever club, and they say, "Oh yeah, you read that's not yeah, man, that guy's got some pretty funny shit." Well, I'd like to think that I'm teaching future veterans law judges and the staff attorneys on how the SMC works, because it's been a sea change. Uh, Even though the regional offices won't change their thoughts on the subject, they feel like they're giving away the farm to give somebody more than a K or an S. They just refuse to do it. And it's supposed to be just like I say it is. It's like, does this guy bad? Does he need help? Yeah, he does. Let's give him the money. Why does he have to fight 6 years to get it?
So what happened to the old adage where that if a veteran files a claim and you have to adjudicate his claim, and he asked for 8 attendance, something, or something like that, that if he's got the requirements for it, then basically they say that they're supposed to maximize the veteran's benefit when available, right?
Yeah, that's what 3.103 says. You got to give them the most that you can possibly give them without giving away the farm and cheating to give him the money. And that's would be normal. You shouldn't have to fight and beg and get down on all fours and say, please. It should be, well, you were stupid enough to raise your right hand to begin with, Graham. And therefore, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and we're going to give you the money because, you earned it. We told you we'd take care of you when you got to this point in your life if you needed it. You shouldn't have to jump through hoops, pay $2,000-3,000 or $10,000 to some doctor in Maryland to get an IMO that says you're screwed up. I mean, you should be able to go to a CMP exam and they should look at you and say, dude, you're screwed up. It should be, why is it so difficult? Why does a Veterans Administration CMP clinician look at you and say, this guy could run the Boston Marathon? I don't see a problem here. And he's wearing ankle foot orthotics. He's got Canadian crutches, and he falls down as he comes through the door. And the examiner is looking at him like, quit faking it. Get up here. I don't get it.
Yeah, that's one thing we need to look at, because I mean they're using these companies to do their CMP exams, and I've had several of them over the past couple of years, and I've only had one or two examiners that actually knew what they were doing. And I'm sure they said they were trained because they got a certificate they were trained by the VA. And then knowing some people that know these CMP exams, and like clockwork, like Bethany, for example, how they're supposed to do things. It's a little bit different how they actually do it. And, and they're contracted out. And so I think it's kind of sometimes you get lucky. Other times, I don't know what's going on, but I mean, there's some people that should have had a positive opinion, but they received a negative opinion over something stupid. So it's just, I mean, to me, it's not fair. I think they should start doing CMPs back in the VA again.
Well, anytime you try to run a guy through a gauntlet of 6 independent medical opinions, all from one family nurse practitioner, no doctors in sight in the office anywhere, those people are supposed to be supervised by a doctor by rights. And you see these people, and it says FNP, family nurse practitioner, and they might have MBA after it, means they took another 6 months and
get a master's in business administration. Yeah.
And you get another attaboy and I was there medal on their chest. But
Oh, boy.
the thing that distresses me is sometimes they'll go into questions, like for instance, on a Parkinson's exam and start talking about your neurological cognitive deficits. This is an area technically that can only be touched on by a psychiatrist or a purely PTSD-ish kind of item. And they touch on psychiatric issues. Again, that's a psychologist bailiwick. Where does an FMP or even a PAC fit into that? They don't. It's against the law. And the more you bitch about it, the more they say, well, yeah, but these people have gone to class and they've been trained. It's like, yeah, they went to Alex's SMC class. They know all about SMC and how to do it. Well, I think that, you know, going to becoming a psychologist or a psychiatrist or whatever it is, that is a much higher calling in 8-10 years rather than a 2-year degree in something. So I think they've cheapened the process. That's one of the reasons why I use Mednick. They don't monkey around, man. They've got guys that are 65 years old and they got a string of letters after their name about 2 or 3 lines across, FACC, MDG, and BRA, and I'm sure they all mean something, but apparently they mean more to the judges than they mean to me, but it works.
Well, the credentials actually, you know, I mean, you know, the pedigree it's what it's all about.
Well, the shit list really exposed the difference between real and false. It shined the light. I hope it didn't put anybody out of business, but if they're doing something that nefarious and just selling an IMO, not performing a real medical process, it cheapens the whole deal. It means nothing for somebody to say something that the credentials are gone. Are meaningless. That's what you see with these claim sharks. They all have their own in-house under the same address where you go in there and you meet, you sign the contract, and they just take you sideways into another room. A guy sits with you for 25 minutes, cranks up 15 ideas of how he can make some money and get you 100%. You win and boom, you pay a ton of money. 6 months or whatever they can get you. Well, and it hurts because they're not accredited. We have to go to school. We know what's legal and what isn't. And they want to get into the game, and they're trying to induce senators and congressmen to go along with this and say, oh, come on, can't we all just get along? Let's just change the rules so all of us can be in this business together and we don't need any classes or any training. Well, that's going to really screw things up in my book. Veterans are not going to get a fair shake. And the VA is going to look at a suspect IMO that a guy has paid good money for. It's useless. And they can see that. At least the system right now is above board the way NOVA's operating it. We've got some tight laws. You don't want to step on your necktie in this business and lose your accreditation. Well, was that a doorbell?
Oh, that's ours. Yeah, go ahead. We get people coming in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that's my story, and I'm going to stick with it. I like Nova. I don't mind paying the money to go to these conventions. I get to meet Ken Carpenter and bump heads with him, Robert Chisholm, Amy Odom. All these brand name people are right there, and they're more than willing to talk to you. They don't have their nose way up in the cloud because they're important. They're my kind of people.
That's what it takes.
So anyway, that's one of the things we found that we achieve a lot more as a group by sharing all of our knowledge. It's not like somebody comes up with a cheap parlor trick or a new hat trick and doesn't share it with his fellow litigators. That's what makes Nova so valuable. We're not competing with the guy that got hit in the intersection, the pedestrian in the crosswalk. We're not all knocking each other down trying to say, here's my business card, hire me. There's not enough of us.
This reminds me of old Danny DeVito. What's that movie with he would sneak into the hospital and sign up the patients while they're in the bed with a broken leg. No, but we had some information. I don't know how accurate it is. We were talking about these claim sharks itself, and somebody said that one of the reasons they came into existence was because there was a lot of mistakes made with a lot of veterans claims made by, I'm not going to name any organizations, but it's not agents. And these people made a lot of mistakes and things like that. And these veterans got screwed out of a lot of money. And by the time they got straightened out, it was in several years. So a couple of these guys realized what was going on, and they kind of jumped in and started doing this.
Well, there was a gal who worked for VA. She was a DRO. I won't mention any names. Nothing could be gained from it. But they had an outfit that they were running out of the Cayman Islands, and they had a storefront in Florida. And they were getting quite a few people, mostly Hispanic, Puerto Rican, that ilk, Latinos, if you will. And it's not that, it's just they felt underrepresented in the business. Not that they were or they weren't, but perhaps it was a language barrier, but these people defeated that for the most part. And they set the whole process up for what actually is now a Claim Sharks model. And there's a new one opening up just about every day or every month. You see a new one. But a lot of them don't know what they're doing, which is disturbing. They just want to get into the business because they think there's a lot of easy money in it. The one thing that struck me is I had a guy come to me and beg me to take his claim. He's already had aid and attendance. He was aiming for SMCT. And I was all set to pull the plug or plug him in and take this power of attorney. And all of a sudden, somebody else told me something. He says, well, that sounds like the name of the guy that's just set up a website for that stolen dollar stuff. It's called Blue Cord Patriots. And I said, oh, no, that couldn't be. I Googled it. And here comes this beautiful website up about 11 Bravo 10s and the Blue Fourragère. And here's the names of the three guys that are running it. And they're all three vets, of course, veterans. And one of them's the name of the guy that's coming to me for tea. And I thought that, well, that's kind of strange. So I emailed him back. I said, well, what's the game here? You got your own game plan here, your own business, but you're asking me to do your claim for you. He says, well, I don't know how to do tea. Oh, I say, so I'm going to get you tea, and you're going to use my template to start helping other guys get tea. No, I'm not going to do that. I don't know necessarily that you're entitled to SMCT. And from the way you're describing it, you just want to learn my technique. I dropped him like a hot potato. He ran to a couple of different other people at Nova, and they had all been forewarned as forearmed. You can Google Blue Cord Patriots to find out if they're still in business. I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe they pancaked right after that. But it's an art form. It took me 5 years to learn how to do an SMC claim and to understand the mechanics of it. And it's taken me even that longer, perhaps, to understand how that 3.156C works, where I dig that perfect punji pit and I stick them little bamboo spears in there with tender, loving care, put the banana leaves on top of it, spread the leaves over the top of that, and hide that pit, and it'll just sit there tell that VA guy to come at me. Come on, man, hit me with your best shot. Walk him right into that pit.
You missed a step, Alex. You forgot you could take a paintbrush and paint snake venom on the end of each one of them.
Well, I tell you, my whole approach to VA claims, as you know, is my combat experience. I think like I want 3-to-1 air superiority, 3-to-1 tactical advantage in terms of personnel and superior firepower and plenty of it. I plan it that way. I don't ever go in there with, gee, I hope I can win, or gee, I hope I can blow enough smoke up that judge's rear end to give me the benefit of the doubt. I go in there with a solid game plan. I've gotten to a point where I don't need a truth meter to tell when I've got a client that's pulling my leg or trying to go too far or try to get too much isn't entitled to.
It happens right now. Seen some doozies.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
And you're right, Alex. It doesn't take if you know the system, even halfway, it doesn't take a whole lot to figure out when a guy is trying to get something that he doesn't deserve. By the way he makes up his story, by the way he says things. I remember the guy I worked with that was talking to, he's asked me what time it was. I told him it was 11:30, 12:30 his time. He says, I got to go. I got a tea time at 2 o'clock. That guy didn't have knee problems and lower back problems if he's going to go out and play golf 2 and 3 days a week.
Well, I had a guy that had gotten a SMCL and he had apparently legitimate criteria. He was pushing me to take him to T. And I'm looking in his VBMS file and I see he's getting VR&E training and he wants to go into 3rd year Farsi language. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy is supposed to have major mental complications and he's doing VR&E in college? That doesn't make any sense. How does he get to college? Does his wife take him there? Does she walk him in and plunk him down in the desk? This guy is this disabled. How could he be doing this? And I started digging around a little bit more, and then all of a sudden the VA comes down on him. And this was right when I first took the power of attorney. The first thing they did is he come in and whacked him back, took away his aid and attendance. It's all of a sudden I'm fighting a restoration of benefits claim instead of trying to get him to T. I'm on the defensive. Mm-hmm. When I saw that VR&E stuff, I had to call him out on it. I says, son, I can't wrap my head around how disabled you are, and you're still going to college on this thing. You're going to have to find somebody else to represent you. I can't, in good faith, do that. Do I let him go?
Usually, if it's bad enough under VR&E, they won't let you go to college. They'll give you independent living. You know what I mean?
Well, I expected. I never even looked at it. I just saw the VR&E
7:45 p.m.
things sitting there, and I didn't look at him. I figured he was trying to do the ILP program. I honestly didn't, until I dug in there and I saw that thing where they turned him down for 3rd year Farsi language credits. Wait a minute. I have a hard time remembering French from 50 years ago. So my Laotian is a little rusty right now. I'm not ready for that. I don't think I'd try it, even with an SMCS. I don't know. I know there's people that game the system. I think I'm lucky that I haven't attracted them to ask Nod. Most of the guys that come to me are messed up. I got this one fella I'm representing right now, and he says, the rest of the guys that were in my squad want to know if you'll represent them too. And I go, well, how many more are we talking about? He says, well, there were 6 of us in the MRAP, but the guy in the turret got killed when it blew us off the road when we hit the IEDs. He said, IEDs plural. He said, yeah, there was 2 of them. Man, it messed us up good. the other 5 guys want to join in, and I'm honored to do that personally. I've done a couple of different groups. You know, I do the long range reconnaissance and patrol guys. I do the Vietnam dust off pilots, and there's another a couple of smaller groups of 2 or 3 each, but they keep referring me out again and again and again. So it's getting to be about the 4th generation now. But it's an honor. But I know that these guys are legitimate. They've got ARCOMs with V's on them, Purple Hearts, and combat infantryman badges. So I, you know, that's kind of their stock and trade. And I don't mind representing them because I don't have to be looking over my shoulder and making sure I'm not representing some guy for stolen valor or worse.
Realize we know Alex is very busy, and I mean he's probably one of the busiest agents in the country. And yes, he can't take every claim, but you know he has a good network, and you know if he looks for information, he can actually refer you to somebody that you know that he trusts, you know, that can actually help out. So you know it's all you know it all comes out.
Well, I did hire an attorney, John. I don't know if I've mentioned that to you. Her name's Amanda Minn, and she's been working for me since November. Taking a lot of my overload on when somebody calls and said, well, it's just, you're not that disabled. So you know, my triage technique, only the guys that are dying or dead or the spouses that start crying on the phone. Those are the ones that get me. So I turn a lot of them over to Amanda, but there's still so many that I have to hand out even more. I don't mind being a clearinghouse. And my wife, known to all as Cupcake Debbie, is studying for the test right now herself. And her managing broker, the gal that usually takes over Debbie's real estate business when we go out on a road trip or go off to conferences, we have to have somebody in command of the real estate company at all times by law. So that gal, her name's Niven, she's also training for the test. So hopefully I'll have 2 more employees working underneath my POA code, you know, within a year and a half. So it's got a great future. I'd love to save more people. I'd love to help more people, but damn, I'm 74, John.
Well, that's Doug just posted the exam dates. You know, Doug just posted the exam dates this year. There's 3 more tests. One's going pretty quick.
Well, back when we were doing it, you had 2 shots a year. If you flunked it, you had to wait, you know, that 6 months to get to it again. But I think they're more frequent now. I don't know.
Yeah, they're more frequent, and a lot more people are taking it.
God, that one I took was 97 questions, and you had to get 75% correct. And I aced the thing, according to the gal that called me up to tell me about it. But I think I've seen it go down as low as 47 questions, and one time it was 27. So it's always changing.
Yeah, it's more now.
There might be, but then again, there's a lot more to learn because I think you'd still have to learn the legacy system because there's still a few of those cases still going. I think I'm down to about 1 or 2. One of them's up at the court right now.
Well, the fact that and all the other stuff coming on and all the changes, you know, and but tell you the truth, in order to be an agent, if you have a hard copy of the manual, okay, and you have to update that copy, these changes are coming so far and fast and furious that you have to have a full-time secretary to just implement the changes in.
N21 is not printed. It's purely an electronic creation. And it changes, as I know, 135 times at least. That was one year I noticed that it had that many changes, but sometimes it has more than that. But look at the precedents up at the court, at the federal circuit, like Barry and Alaska, Duran, and some of these other things. They changed law so drastically that the M21 not only has a do this, don't do that, but there's a lot of cascading effect into other parts of the M21 that when you change this, it compounds it with interest over here someplace else.
What goes up
So
must come down.
it isn't that easy a fix to just change one little paragraph somewhere.
What's the rule? Every equal reaction has an opposite reaction.
Yeah, sir. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So
You go through VA life as a VA agent, you want to be an irresistible force.
you want to be a good tank with a good flamethrower. You know what I mean?
Well, I had a real attitude about that when I was over there. I carried 2 hand grenades in my cargo pocket down here everywhere I went. In addition to a 357 Magnum, I have great faith in hand grenades. But you know, the DuPont Nemours got the contract for the M26s. They were the cheapest bidder. That's why you need 2, just in case.
Well, that's why the Japanese soldiers in New Guinea in World War II, they forgot to take their hand grenades with them. They tried crossing these little lakes to get to the other side, and well, it was one of the biggest mass casualties of the Japanese soldiers without a shot being fired at them. All these crocodiles started eating them.
Well, we ferried in a group of 6 special forces group into Ho Chi Minh Trail one day in August. We landed 6 different little airstrips, and they got out at airstrip number 4, and we still hit 5 and 6 just to confuse the enemy so they wouldn't know where we let them off at. And they were carrying cases of hand grenades, and when we picked them up about a week later and brought them back in. We were sitting out behind the barracks drinking beer after they got back. Not the officers, of course, but the enlisted guys. I said, I know you guys aren't supposed to tell us what y'all was doing. I said, what were you doing? And says, well, I guess I don't mind telling you. He says, our special effects guys open them things up real careful and take them hand grenades out and rotate the prussic acid fuse where you pull the pin and the bail flips off and the hand grenade goes off. So it kind of screws up their morale because nobody wants to use hand grenades because they're afraid they're going to blow themselves up with them. And so, yeah, that was kind of an interesting psychiatric operation to destroy their morale. And apparently they did it with the 7.62 rounds for the AKs and the SKSs. They load that thing chock full of lead azide, and when that primer hits the end of that round, and the whole gun blows up in their face. It gets to the point where they're a little gun shy about every time they pull the trigger, they flinch a little bit so their aim's off.
That kind of reminds me of recent activity over in the Middle East there with pagers.
Oh, well, same. Yeah, we might have copied the Mossad, but I never heard of doing anything like that. But I thought it was intriguing that they spent a lot of time salting down the Ho Chi Minh Trail with munitions that were a little bit suspect. Yeah, life.
Look what happened.
War is hell. War is hell, but combat is something entirely different.
Dubious, you know. I mean, you got some really smart people coming up with this stuff, and they actually carry it out. You know, and it's Japanese in World War II were the worst ones, man.
Well, the last thing I was going to tell y'all today is I was reading some important articles, and I read one, and this wasn't by Doug Collins, the new VA secretary. It was somebody else making an observation that the VA was getting ready to get rid of 80,000 employees that were surplus people, HR, DEI, whatever, programs that were not conducive to helping veterans get to a hospital or get better service or more doctors, more psychiatrists. They were just going to get rid of too many people that didn't have a functional purpose. And they said, yeah, but they're all veterans. And it turns out of those 80,000 people, only 5,000 of them are veterans. And that changes the whole timbre of the conversation. If it was all 80,000 of them were all veterans, I would be strongly against that. I would think, why don't we triage this somehow and keep the most disabled veterans that we can in jobs to keep them occupied? It's a good thing to get disabled people out in public. It helps them mentally. I know that. But I thought the numbers are going to be far higher than 5,000 veterans involved in this that might lose their jobs. So it disturbs me greatly to read the newspapers or listen to the news at 6 o'clock, because sometimes it's a little bit more slanted. I think that Fox is slanted. I think that they're all slanted, but
yes.
I have to realize that there's a lot of mistruths being populated out there. We have to cut back. We're spending money like drunken sailors, and some of these programs they're squandering money on, it appalls me. I can't wrap my brain around it. But I think you can cut too much, but I haven't seen too much yet. For everything I've seen, there hasn't been enough.
Well, Alex, when we get a chance, I'll tell you about the VA spending $1,200 to get me a $5 rubber ball.
Well, he spent about $2.5 million trying to keep me out of my greenhouse.
Have you got? Are they finished construction now? So is it ready to go?
We had a hard time finding anybody who wanted to be a general contractor. We didn't feel like paying them $200 an hour to sit there and watch. So we renewed our old contractor's license. I gave it up in 2012 when I got too ill, and my son-in-law started a whole new company. But we just renewed ours just to do the greenhouse, and then we'll let it die out again.
Oh, it sounds like a winner to me.
Well, it solves the purpose of somebody being the go-to guy. That's what the VA wants, one person to talk to, not 16 subcontractors for concrete, electrical, plumbing.
I know, it's it's a headache. Well, guys, I hate to say this, but all good things must come to an end. Alex, thanks for the update. We appreciate everything you do, and we'll have you back on real soon to have another good shindig. This single malt scotch is for you. You probably got horses that are getting ready to eat.
Yes, I do.
Ray, thank you for coming on. We appreciate you, buddy. Every time we get a
enjoyed it.
And guys, we got some changes coming up here. We're going to go back to the live broadcast hopefully here in the next few weeks. We're going to do some trials and errors and see how it works out with Bethany here starting the next couple of days. So once we get it worked out, we'll still be doing them on Zoom, but there'll be another format you can broadcast, listen to the live shows. But with that, we want to thank everybody for listening. This is John on behalf of the Exposed Vet Productions, Mr. Ray Cobb and John Stacy. They call him Jay Basher and Mr. Alex Graham. We'll be signing off for now.
Thanks, John.
Right,
see y'all later.
All right, later.